Cup of Joe with your average Joe. Cup of Joe with Joe.
Hey, Joe. Hello. Welcome to
Hey.
ATCN.
Hey, good to be back.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
I got to tell you that jingle is really growing on me. You know?
Yeah.
It says my name like 10 times. So.
Yeah. Maybe too many times. All right. Well, the question we're talking about today is Christianity anti-intellectual? What's your take?
No. All right, we're done. Let's go home.
No. Let's go
Okay.
home. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a common view
Yeah.
of Christians, and let me tell you the story. I think it's a
Oh,
story
okay.
you've
Yeah.
heard before. It's often portrayed in media. There's this young person who grows up kind of in the countryside or somewhere, and then he's very devout, goes to church, believes in God. But as he grows older, as he takes science classes, as he moves on to college and learns more about the world, he can't hold on to his faith anymore. He has to make the brave choice to be guided by evidence and truth, and then converts to atheism. And I think this is the kind of story we hear often. It really feeds into this perception of Christianity as being anti-intellectual.
Yeah, I heard a lot of those stories too, and I heard a lot of people say that was their experience going to college, of their faith. They lost it in college. And there's kind of like two stereotypes embedded in that story. One is the like simple, uneducated, surrounded by religious people, and that's why I'm Christian, that kind of stereotype, right? And then there's the like, I took science classes, I'm a reasoned individual, I'm educated, and so now I'm going to throw off the chains of tradition. And that's like another stereotype. And those two stereotypical figures are often like juxtaposed to each other, not just in like news or media, or like it's just everywhere. It seems like that those stereotypes are everywhere.
Yeah, and so these are the stereotypes. Can we just all agree that stereotypes are often wrong?
Yeah,
Okay.
not
and,
helpful.
I think that we're really wary about stereotyping people, but somehow when it comes to Christians, people feel just a lot more comfortable about just upholding these stereotypes.
Yeah.
Let's just consider the stereotype. I mean, is it even true? Is it really the case that Christians are not intellectual? And for someone who has that view, I think that person is really ignorant to a lot of history to actually believe that. Just there have been so many intellectual giants in so many different fields throughout history that were firm believers in God. In the area of politics, many of our founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, I'm not throwing away my shot. Yeah, that guy, right?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, he actually had a sincere Christian faith.
Okay, wow, I didn't know that.
Christian, civil rights leaders like William Wilberforce, who basically ended the slave trade in the British Empire, Martin Luther King Jr., all of his civil rights work for racial equality, that was all motivated by their faith in God. Giants in science, such as Galileo, surprisingly, Isaac Newton, they actually had a very firm faith and belief in God.
Wow. Wow. So those are a lot of like historical examples, which are great. But are there any examples of like modern people, people more recent intellectuals who are also Christian?
Yeah, like the current director of the National Institute of Health, that job is actually considered by some to be the most prestigious job in science. And his name is Francis Collins. He's the guy who headed the Human Genome Project a few years back. He's actually Dr. Anthony Fauci's boss. Yeah, and he is a devout Christian. And if you hear his story is the reverse of that typical, prototypical conversion story we talked about in the beginning. He was someone who was an atheist going into grad school, but as he investigated, as he looked at the evidence, as he learned more, he became convinced of the truth of Christianity, and he converted. And he said that he was very profoundly influenced by the writings of C.S. Lewis, who coincidentally also was an atheist who was on a mission to discredit Christianity. And as he looked into the evidence, as he investigated further, he also became converted. And he has this great quote. He described himself as the most dejected and reluctant convert in all of England.
Yeah.
But he ends up becoming one of the great intellectual Christian writers of the 20th century.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis. I mean, he wrote *Lion, Witch, of the Wardrobe*, *Mere Christianity*, still classics, right? Okay, so I get it. The stereotypes of Christians being non-intellectual, non-scientific people, those are just plain wrong. If you look at history, modern times, so many examples of intellectual giants from the Christian tradition. And so that makes me wonder, like, is there something about Christianity where intellectualism actually thrives and it's not anti-intellectual?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a reason why so many of these intellectual giants emerged out of the Christian West. It's because the Christian understanding of the world, or what we often refer to as the worldview, the Christian worldview, it really encouraged study and discovery. It's because Christians, they believe that God was the one who created all of nature. And so, it contrasts a lot with a lot of other religions who viewed viewed nature as some sort of deity. So a lot of cultures they like worship the sun, or there was some god of the moon or god of some sort of animal or something like that. But Christians had a very different understanding of the world. The sun, it's not a god. It's just a lamp hung there in the sky by God to give us light. There's nothing mystical or spiritual about it, and so you no longer have to like view it as an object of worship, but it's something you study, you look into, and you try to observe. And also the Christian view of God affected this as well, because Christians viewed God as being a God of order, and they viewed God as setting the laws of nature by which nature ran. And so you look at events in the world, you look at something like a hurricane, and the explanation isn't that it's some God who's acting really erratic or angry or something like that. And it encouraged people to actually look at what are the causes, what is causing this behavior.
Wow.
And so, the intellectual, the scientific discoveries, they emerged from this Christian view of God and the world that He created. And this is why the Enlightenment, it happened in the Christian West and not in some other cultures. In fact, a lot of the most preeminent names of the Enlightenment, people like Isaac Newton, they were profoundly influenced by their faith. Isaac Newton, he actually spent more time studying theology than science.
Wow.
Yeah, and for all you college students out there, the university system itself is a gift from Christianity. The first universities in America, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, they were actually established by Christians to train up Christian ministers.
Wow. Yeah, man. So I can see clearly that because of the Christian worldview, the Christian worldview is encouraging education and intellectual discovery. There's this rich intellectual tradition in it. And so then, why then are so many smart people today atheists? Why are they so hostile to Christianity?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. But, the reason is people are not completely guided by evidence and by reason. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go into the mix of why people believe a certain thing or decide to follow a certain life philosophy. I mean, just because you're intelligent, it doesn't mean that you don't have biases or you don't have some sort of emotional baggage or you don't have some ulterior motives. I mean, we're all human. And frankly, a lot of people, they're not going to like the idea of a God who has authority over you, a God who is going to judge you, who is going to judge some of your actions as sinful or immoral. And actually, surprisingly, a lot of well-known atheists have candidly admitted that this was a huge factor in their beliefs. And so, one person is Aldous Huxley, who's famous for writing Brave New World. And he has this quote: for myself, as no doubt for most of my friends, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation from a certain system of morality. We objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom. There was one admirably simple method of confuting these people and justifying ourselves in our erotic revolt. We would deny that the world had any meaning whatsoever.
Wow.
And then similarly, Thomas Nagel, he's one of the most preeminent philosophers in America, and he writes this: I want atheism to be true and am made uneasy by the fact that some of the most intelligent and well-informed people I know are religious believers. It isn't just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that I'm right in my belief. It's that I hope there is no God. I don't want there to be God. I don't want the universe to be like that. So there's a
Wow.
lot of reasons besides pure facts and evidence that go
Yeah.
into people's views about Christianity.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's Christianity or atheism, like neither of these can be proven 100%, like some sort of math theorem or something like that. There are people who are way smarter than you or me who believe in Christianity. There's really smart people who are atheists. And so it's not boiled down to a matter of intelligence.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So then, like, let's say I'm a typical college student, and I want to figure out whether or not this is true for myself. You know, I want to engage with Christianity intellectually. I want to grow in my faith intellectually. I want to see the reasons for why it is or isn't true. Where do I start? How do I do that?
Well, if you do want to investigate the evidence and look at the reasons, you're in luck because there are so many resources out there, tons of books, tons of websites. I mean, things talking about like looking at the beginning of the universe to arguments from the fine tuning of the laws of nature to philosophical arguments from morality, objective morality. There's also a lot of historical and archaeological evidence to support the Bible. Talking about all these, any one of these, it would take a long time. So obviously, we're not going to get into a lot of detail in any one of these arguments today on this show. But if you want a shortcut, if there's one thing you want to look at, my recommendation would be to look at the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. I mean, Christianity, it really does boil down to this issue. Is Jesus really God as he claimed? Now, if someone says they're God in the flesh, you don't have to take that all too seriously. Like I've heard people on the streets say things like that. But if someone says they're God and they're going to prove it to you by dying and 3 days later rising from the dead, and they actually do that, well, I mean, that's some compelling evidence.
That'd be pretty good.
Right? And Christianity has actually banked the validity of the entire religion on this one issue. In fact, in the Bible, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul says, and if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain and your faith is in vain. Wow. So if you're looking for a place to start, I think that's as good a place as any. And one of my favorite resources on this issue is William Lane Craig. He's an expert in this field.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was really helpful. Thank you so much for your take. Let's have some coffee and hey, back to you guys.
All right. Sounds good.